The drop was never soft. Mira slammed into the alien soil hard enough to knock the air from her lungs, the translucent shell of the pod cracking as it skidded across violet moss. Her body ached with the thud of impact, but training kicked in. Roll, breathe, assess. She was on her feet within seconds, back hunched, eyes scanning. A jagged clearing stretched ahead, rimmed by towering ferns that shimmered with moisture and an uneasy hum. 3 moons hung in the violet sky like pale eyes. The pod hissed and dissolved behind her, vanishing into metallic mist. No trace, no trail. Typical. Contestant Mira sighed. Boomed a voice from nowhere and everywhere, as if the entire sky were speaking in a language she understood but hadn't learned. Technology is prohibited. Survival begins now. Time remaining, 29 days, 23 hours. Then silence, except for the wind, and something clicking faintly in the underbrush. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She'd expected difficulty, but not this kind of drop. No orientation, no gear, just the clothing on her back, stitched linen tunic, rough pants, soft-soled boots, and a satchel with nothing more than cordage, a flint shard, and a sealed metal canister. No comms, no tools. The game was called Survive without, and now she understood why. She looked up. A trio of spindly-winged drones had hovered silently during the descent, now gone. She was being watched, just not helped. The air had a strange electric taste. Breathing felt like inhaling mist. Alien flowers opened and shut like mouths. Everything pulsed, responded, observed. She crouched beside a tree root thicker than her torso, eyes scanning the underbrush. Her mind jumped to checklist mode. Water, shelter, fire, food. Not in that order. The sun, or whichever the moons were producing light, was already shifting position. Beneath the nearest ridge, Mira found a shallow cave, half covered in creepers. Not ideal, but better than open air. She reached into her satchel and found dry fibrous bark, some leaves, and a bit of tinder. The flint shard gleamed like a thong. Fire first. She needed heat and light, and maybe the smoke would drive off whatever creatures clicked in the shadows. It took her 2 hours to get a spark. Kneeling over the tiny pile of tinder, her hands blistered and lips dry, Mira coaxed the ember like it was her last breath. The wind tried to steal it. Her patience, not her strength, saved her. She fed it slowly, letting it catch the fibers and grow. When it finally burst into a flame the size of her palm, she sat back and let herself smile. A fire meant she was still in control. Barely. Night came fast and without mercy. The heat dropped, and with it came sound. Whistles, thuds, clicking. Insects or machines, she couldn't tell. Glowing eyes blinked at the edge of the trees, but nothing approached. The fire held them back. She curled up beside it, sleep fighting the fear in her gut. This wasn't a test of endurance. It was a demonstration. Someone or something wanted to see what she would do without her species' crutches. Her dreams were thick with images of metal jaws and broken earth soil. Waking was better. At least here she could act. The next morning, Myra's priority was water. Her mouth was past dry. She followed a narrow animal trail through luminous shrubs until it opened into a hollow where a stream cut through black stones. It looked clear. She knelt but stopped herself. Too easy. She scooped some in her hand and sniffed. It smelled off, metallic, faintly bitter. She dipped a leaf in and waited. Within minutes, it curled and darkened, poisonous, or at least not drinkable untreated. She needed filtration, maybe boiling. Her stomach cramped with thirst, but instinct beat desperation. She collected water in her metal canister and returned to camp. Over the fire, she set the canister on a tripod of sharpened sticks, balancing it precariously over the flames. It took longer than she liked, but the water boiled, and with it came clarity. She was going to have to do this all the way. No shortcuts. The second day, she found something like edible roots, thick, knotted, bulbous things that peeled open with a knife made from a broken stone. The inside was starchy like jicama and didn't react to flame. She ate it cautiously. Her stomach held. Then came the second voice. You are being watched. Mira froze. The voice was in her mind, not her ears. Soft, layered, female, or something like it. She scanned the trees. A shimmer moved between the trunks. Something was observing her, invisible but not silent. "I know," she said aloud, trying to keep her tone calm. "You're curious." No answer. She continued her work, gathering dry moss, splitting bark into strips, organizing stones. The presence remained for hours, watchful, silent, waiting. That night, something shifted. She woke to soft footsteps. Not animal. Too careful. Her fire had died down to coals. Mira didn't move, just opened one eye. A figure crouched nearby. Small, thin limbs, elongated skull, skin like dark bronze. It was not fully human, not fully alien either. A hybrid. Its large black eyes reflected the dying embers. It wasn't threatening her. It was watching her boil water again. She sat up slowly. Thirsty. It cocked its head. Mira poured a cup from the pot and slid it forward. The creature approached cautiously, sniffed it, and dipped 2 clawed fingers in. Then it vanished into the trees, cup untouched. Mira didn't follow. In the following days, she saw more like it. 3 tall ones, lean and armored in organic plating. Their movements were fluid, almost ritualistic. They never came close, never spoke. But they circled her camp at dusk, always watching. She began leaving small offerings, boiled roots, soap made from rendered seed oil and ash, purified water. Each morning, the offerings were gone. One night, a necklace was left in their place, braided fibers and a shard of translucent stone, glowing faintly in moonlight. It wasn't a warning. It was respect, and that terrified her more than being hunted, because it meant they understood her. They valued her choices. They were watching this game too, not just as observers, but as participants. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was teaching them. And someone or something, above all this, was studying what happened when a human stripped of tools was dropped into a world not her own and told to thrive. Her fire blazed high that night, not from fear, but from realization. The game wasn't about survival. It was about what she would become without the things she'd always thought defined her. And in the distance, something metallic screamed. Not animal, not alien, not like them. Something else had arrived on the planet. Something that didn't care about fire or respect or primitive rules. She poured a fresh pot of water onto the flames and began sharpening her stone blade. Mira awoke to the scent of smoke and ash clinging to her skin, her limbs aching with cold from the damp alien morning. The fire had gone out during the night, leaving only a whisper of warmth in the coals. Around her, dew clung to leaves like glass beads. The jungle pulsed with life, soft insect wings humming in the fog. She sat up, rubbing her shoulders, and stared at the half-burned root she'd failed to finish the night before. Her body was still adjusting, its needs louder here, more urgent. Hunger was a dull gnawing, but thirst remained a sharper threat. She approached the fire pit and blew gently into the coals. A weak orange glow blinked to life, responding like a sullen eye. She added dry moss, twigs, slowly nurturing the flame back into something steady. Her hands were dirty, fingers blackened. A thin layer of grime covered her arms and neck. It wasn't just unpleasant, it was dangerous. Infection, illness, rot. Even a scratch could mean death if she couldn't stay clean. Nearby, the small stream she found still trickled between sharp stones, mocking her with its clarity. She knew better now. It was useless in its raw form. Boiling helped, but the aftertaste lingered, sharp and metallic, like biting on coins. Still, it kept her alive. Today she would solve more than thirst. She crouched by her makeshift shelter, fingers sifting through the seeds and pulp she collected yesterday. From one of the flowering pods, she'd noticed an oily residue seeping between the fibers. Thick and yellow, not unlike olive oil. She'd rubbed it between her fingers and felt the slick coat cling to her skin. It could work. Soap was basic chemistry. Fat or oil lie in heat. No technology needed. Only fire, patience, and the right mix. She scraped ash from the fire, stirring it into a crude bowl made of curled bark. When she poured in water and stirred, a gray sludge formed, warm and gritty. The lye was weak, but it might suffice. Into this, she dripped the oily extract, working slowly, hand steady, watching for signs. The mixture began to thicken as it simmered near the fire, forming a cloudy paste that clung to the bark walls. It stank, but it might save her life. She let it cool, fingers aching from the heat. Then she scooped a little onto her palm and scrubbed her forearm. The sensation was immediate, grime lifting, soot peeling, skin beneath clean. Not perfect, not pure, but safe enough. Mira sat back, breathing through her nose, staring at the paste like it was gold. Primitive hygiene. But it gave her an edge, and maybe, if the aliens were still watching, a message. She wasn't surviving by accident. She was solving. The brush rustled to her left. Instinct took over. She didn't reach for her stone blade, just froze, listening. Then came the soft tread, bare feet on leaf mulch. The child again. Small, wiry, head ridged like bone armor, eyes large and unblinking. It stepped into the clearing without hesitation this time, nostrils flaring as it took in the scent of soap. Mira didn't move. The alien crouched near the fire, gaze fixed on the bark bowl. With slow hands, Mira dipped 2 fingers into the paste and held it out. The child sniffed, then mimicked her gesture, rubbing its long fingers across its own wrist. It flinched at the sensation, then blinked, curious. It had understood. They didn't speak. But Mira nodded, and the creature inclined its head before backing away into the trees again, disappearing like smoke. The encounter was brief, but it left her pulse racing. She wasn't alone anymore. Not entirely. Later that day, she moved deeper into the jungle. Her goal was simple: improve her water purification. Boiling alone wasn't efficient. She needed a filtration system. She found a tall, hollow stalk, something like bamboo, and cut segments with a sharpened stone. Layering crushed charcoal, moss, and sand inside, she created a rough filter tube. It wouldn't purify everything, but it would strain debris and reduce the metallic taste. She tested on the stream water and noticed an improvement. Still not perfect, but enough to ease her stomach. Returning to camp, Mira noticed a gift before she saw the visitor. A bundle of roots, tightly wrapped in leaf, sat beside her shelter. The child had returned, unseen. She looked around but saw only shifting foliage. Trust, then, or barter. She boiled the roots at night, slicing them open and eating cautiously. Sweet, starchy filling. A blessing. But she couldn't forget the scream from the previous night. Metallic. Inhuman. A violation of the rules. That sound didn't come from anything like the child. That was something else. She kept her fire burning long after dark, tossing dry branches into it until flames licked high into the air. If there were watchers, let them see her clearly. No fear. No tech. No surrender. Later, under the blanket of triple moons, Mira began weaving rope from vine fibers. Her fingers worked instinctively. Shelter needed reinforcing. Traps might come later. Every task was a meditation. She couldn't afford panic. Not yet, but inside her, something had shifted. It was no longer just about staying alive. It was about doing it right. About proving that humans didn't need steel or circuits to thrive. That adaptation wasn't about dominance, but understanding. The jungle whispered around her, never quiet, never still. Creatures moved through the dark, some curious, others wary. And somewhere beyond the trees, a different kind of presence stirred. Something watching her not with wonder, but with calculation. She sharpened her blade on a smooth rock, eyes on the flickering shadows. Each spark of flint was a small defiance. She wouldn't hide. She would be seen. And when the rules broke again, when the scream returned in steel and fire, she'd be ready, not with lasers or drones, but with hands that knew how to make fire from sticks. Soap from ash, clean water from poison, and with the will to survive where machines could not. The morning arrived not with birdsong, but with stillness. The jungle, usually alive with buzzing wings and distant howls, fell into an eerie silence. Mira stirred from sleep slowly, her senses catching up with her instincts. Something had changed. The air no longer carried the scent of damp earth and sap. It was dry, scorched faintly, as if heat had passed through violently in the night. She emerged from her shelter, shoulders tight, blade in hand. Ash littered the nearby underbrush. Something had burned. She followed the faint black trail into the trees and found a ring of scorched ground no more than 30 meters away. The center was seared clean, no plant life, no stones, just a perfect circle of dead soil. Around its edge, faint impressions were stamped into the earth. Not boots, not claws, tracks like heavy machinery. Mira crouched low and touched the soot. Warm, recent. They were here. Whoever, or whatever, had broken the rules. She returned to camp with quick steps, heart ticking fast. It wasn't fear, yet it was the ache of encroachment. She fought for every mouthful of water, every scrap of safety. And now something else was cheating. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about integrity. And someone was violating it. Later that day, the alien child returned, but not alone. 2 adults followed, tall and lean, each wrapped in strands of scale fibers. One bore a long, curved bone across its back, like a ceremonial blade. The other carried a pouch slung across one hip, and moved with a grace that made Mira feel clumsy. The child led them forward, gesturing toward the fire, the tools, the drying herbs and oil soap set on bark. Mira stood still, one hand open, the other resting lightly on the stone blade at her waist, not threatening, just cautious. The taller one stepped forward and crouched beside the soap. It dipped 2 fingers into the paste, then into the water pot, mimicking her scrubbing motion. Its dark eyes narrowed, then met Myra's. Understanding passed silently. The creature extended its arm. Hanging from a thin cord was a pendant carved from translucent bone, polished smooth. It held it out. Mira accepted it. A mark, perhaps. Recognition. Or alignment. The other adult began laying out objects on the ground between them. Bundled roots, fruit pods, strips of sinew. An offering. Trade. Mira added clean water, fire-charred bark, a bundle of cordage. The silent ritual unfolded with patient gestures, each movement deliberate, ceremonial. There were no words, only meaning. When the exchange finished, the elder with the bone weapon gestured to the trees, then pointed to the sky. Its eyes turned hard. Danger above. Mira understood. The machine that broke the rules had come from the sky, and it threatened more than just the game. That night they stayed, silent sentinels around the fire. The child curled near her shelter, mimicking her movements, even trying the soap again. The elders said nothing, but their presence was weight enough. They were here to decide if she was worthy of more than observation. The machine came at dawn. It didn't announce itself. It simply arrived, drifting through the trees like a predator made of angles. Metallic and wrong, its surface reflected the forest in broken shards. It made no sound as it moved, but the leaves curled in its wake, and the air tasted like static. Mira saw it before it saw her. She ducked low, motioning silently to the others. The adults melted into the shadows with practiced ease. Only the child remained, eyes wide, trembling, until Mira tugged it behind her shelter. The machine hovered above the clearing, scanning. It wasn't a drone. It was a judge. It pulsed once, then emitted a beam of violet light that passed over the fire pit, the water system, the hanging herbs. Myra's heart pounded as it hesitated over the metal canister she'd boiled water in. Then the beam faded. A warning? No, a statement. The game was being monitored, and someone had brought tech into it. Someone other than her. It didn't attack. It vanished as suddenly as it had come, folding upward into the trees, like a breath reversed. When it was gone, the silence broke. The elder stepped out, hands lifted in a gesture Mira hadn't seen before. Fingers splayed, palms up. Then it knelt and, using a sharpened stick, began drawing into the dirt. 3 circles. One for Mira, one for themselves, one larger, intersecting both. Then a jagged mark slicing through them all. Mira watched, her mind working. She knelt beside the drawing, picked up her own stick, and added a 4 shape, a rectangle, square and dark. The machine. She pointed to it, then raised her shoulders in a question. The elder nodded once. Together, they wiped the drawing clean. Mira stood, eyes narrowing. There was another player. Another human had brought tech. And that act had invited something else onto the playing field. Not just punishment, but escalation. That night, the child brought her something unexpected. A bundle of vines carefully braided into a pattern, with flat stones tied along the length. A belt, perhaps, but it held something else. Woven into the middle was a small strip of gleaming metal, clearly scavenged and distinctly human-made. Myra's throat tightened. Proof. Another contestant. One who had violated the game's law. The central conflict was no longer between Mira and the wilderness. It was between her and the unseen player who had brought technology into a world where it had no place. That choice wasn't just selfish. It endangered the entire balance. It had triggered surveillance, judgment, and perhaps worse. She rose with the belt in hand, staring into the trees, wondering how far the other human had gone, what they had built, what they were willing to destroy. If they had firepower, shelter, sensors, it could unravel everything. Not just the trial, but the fragile peace between species. The aliens had opened themselves to her, not because she was powerful, but because she respected the laws of the land. This other human did not. Mira sat alone for a long while after the fire died. The child slept beside the coals, curled like a cat. The elders had gone, but she could feel their gaze from the forest. She turned the strip of metal in her hands again and again. Tomorrow, she would find the source. She would not wait for machines to judge her species by another's recklessness. She would show them what real survival looked like. Not dominance, not deception, but honor. Mira moved before dawn, slipping through the waking forest with quiet resolve. The child had watched her leave, wide-eyed, but said nothing, only touched the spot where the woven belt had hung. The metal fragment was now strapped across Myra's shoulder, visible, deliberate, a signal. She wasn't hiding anymore. The trail was subtle, almost erased by wind and time. But humans, even in the most cautious states, left signs. The bent stem of a plant, the scuff of a boot's sole on damp stone, the unnatural straightness of a cut vine. Mira followed with growing certainty, her thoughts dark and firm. Whoever this other contestant was, they hadn't just broken the rules. They had invited consequences neither of them could control. She stopped at a ridge where the trees thinned, revealing a small basin below. It was there, partially camouflaged beneath netting woven with leaves and dust, that she saw it, a structure. No fire, no smoke, but smooth surfaces that caught light in ways no natural material could. Metal. At first glance, it looked like a collapsed pod, but as she circled closer, Mira recognized the signs of adaptation. Armor plates repurposed as shelter walls. Solar film lining the top, thin and gray like skin. Small antennae half buried in the earth, emitting nothing now, but likely once active. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't desperation. It was calculated. She crouched behind a rock shelf and waited. Movement. A figure stepped from the makeshift structure, taller than her, gaunt, pale from lack of sun. His beard was thin and unkempt, but his uniform was still partially intact. Off-world expedition colors, though faded with ash and sweat. A patch on his shoulder confirmed her fear. Earth colonist. Like her, he stretched stiffly, glanced around the clearing, and moved to a small module near the edge of the structure. From it, he withdrew a black, skeletal device, something between a scanner and a pulse rifle. He tapped it with practiced familiarity, then paused. He looked up, straight at her. "Don't run," she called, stepping into the open. The man's eyes narrowed, but he didn't raise the device. "You're from Earth," he said, his voice dry and brittle. "So are you. Why did you bring tech?" He shrugged, lowering the scanner. "Didn't plan to. Hit it. Figured the rules were just for show." "They're not." "No, they're worse." Mira stepped closer. "You triggered something. Machines are scanning now. Watching. You've endangered the whole trial." He snorted. "Trial? It's a death sentence. This planet eats people. You want to impress the aliens? Fine. I want to live." "So do I, but I'm doing it without cheating." The man's jaw clenched. He looked thinner up close, eyes sunken with stress and lack of sleep. "How many days have you lasted?" 18, Mira replied. 12 to go. I've been here 21. You think I haven't tried the noble route? I boiled water, slept in dirt. Then the storms came. Creatures attacked. So I used what I had. They came because of you, she said sharply. The enforcement drones. The judgment machines. They weren't part of the original setup. You broke the world. He looked away, shame flickering across his features, but not enough to break his resolve. I'm not dismantling it, he muttered. I'll stay out of sight. Hide it better. That won't matter anymore. Mira unslung the metal belt and tossed it to his feet. They already know. He stared at it for a long moment, then dropped to sit on a crate. The device in his lap hung loosely, now useless. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, he whispered. You did. They sat in silence for a while, the forest resuming its cautious song around them. Then Mira stood. I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to fix it. You can help, or you can stay here waiting for the next machine to incinerate your roof. He didn't answer, but when she turned to leave, she heard the soft crunch of his footsteps behind her. They returned together to the clearing Mira called home. The fire had burned low. The child emerged first, then the elders, appearing from the trees with quiet gravity, their eyes fixed on the newcomer, reading him in ways that bypassed language. He stood awkwardly beside Mira, one hand resting on the belt she returned to him. I brought him, she said aloud. He broke the rule, but he's ready to atone. Silence stretched. Then the elder approached. Slowly, deliberately, it lifted its hand and pressed 2 fingers to the man's forehead. Judgment, forgiveness, or warning. He flinched but didn't step back. Later, Mira instructed him on the camp's rhythm, boiling water, crafting soap, tending the fire. He was clumsy at first, but his hands remembered the basics. Days passed. He learned to strip bark for shelter, to identify the roots that didn't rot the tongue. He helped bind rope, laid new traps, reinforced the filtration system with Myra's guidance. The machine stopped coming. For a time. Then on the 29th night, as a storm raged beyond the treetops, a new sound tore through the sky. Low, droning, deliberate. A vessel. Not alien. Not natural. Human-made. Mira and the man, his name was Doran, stood side by side, watching the sky flare with artificial light. It wasn't a rescue. It was a retrieval. But for whom? At dawn, the jungle parted as figures emerged, tall, armored, and not like the watchers who judged before. These bore insignias, emblems Mira hadn't seen since Earth. A broadcasting corporation. The game's producers. One approached with a narrow device in hand and smiled. Congratulations. You both survived. Extraction begins shortly. Mira didn't move. Doran glanced at her. No, she said softly. I'm not going with you. The producer blinked. You'll forfeit the prize. This planet isn't a game. It's a test, and I'm not done learning. Behind her, the child stood with the pendant she'd been given, eyes fixed on Mira. The producer's smile faltered. Your story's trending well on the outer circuits. You could be... No, she repeated. He looked at Doran. And you? Doran hesitated, then shook his head. We'll stay. The producer sighed, tapped a button on his wrist pad, and turned away. Within minutes, the retrieval craft was gone. Mira turned back toward the trees, toward the fire, toward the life she'd chosen. Not because she had to, but because survival wasn't about escaping the wild. It was about belonging to it.